Hi, Sesa. Welcome. It's so good to meet you. Not to meet you, but to talk with you. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm excited about having this conversation. I've been waiting for it.
Yeah. It's so great to have you. So I'm going to start with the basic questions. So what is it that you do at TSC? Okay, so explain to us that, and also where are you dialing from? Because we have like this international community, and then how did you end up at TSC? So what do you do? Where are you dialing from? And how did you end up at TSC?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So I've been sitting this week thinking about that. I'm like, oh my God, I've been at TSC for like almost 3 years now. Oh my God. It was so interesting to think about it. So the first time I heard about TSC was like from a friend, and the friend told me that Michael was looking for tutors. I'm like, okay, I'm open for it. I just graduated. I'm like, okay, so this would be a good thing for me. So I jumped for it and then connected me with Michael. And okay, I had this beautiful interview with Michael because with me, it just came natural. I had been doing tutoring for the longest time I was in varsity. So it was just like an easy thing for me. And yeah, that's how I joined TSC, and it was good.
Mm-hmm.
And to my surprise, I fell in love with the school. I don't want to lie. So first, before I started math tutoring, I was just like moving around the classes, shadowing. It was so beautiful to see like the way the classes were taught. I really fell in love, and I don't know. I just feel like my entire life is TSC now because I'm like so in love with the school. So I started with like basic math tutoring, but now
Mm-hmm.
I am a math guide in the novice. I'm not sure if I should say I am or was because
Mm,
I don't think I'm going to be in the following year. So I
okay.
was a math guide and STEM guide in the novice, and that was like a beautiful experience. And having to work with like little kids, it's
Mm-hmm.
just so amazing. It actually lightens up your entire day. And actually having conversations with them is like so beautiful.
Yeah. My impression is that everything that relates with mathematics somehow relates with you. So when we're having like some kind of conversation in the school about math or about how is a specific student doing or whatever, it's like, well, Sessa will probably know it. So you're basically this reference within school for math. But let me just take a step back. You were saying that you graduated when you finished graduated, Michael reached out to you. What did you study in college?
Oh, in college I just did like a not a mathematics degree, what am I saying? A Bachelor of Science degree, but I
Mm,
majored in mathematics and chemistry.
mm,
But tell you the truth, chemistry part was like a by the way thing because I was told that I need to have a double major. I was like, okay,
mm.
so I'm gonna take the math and probably with the chemistry. So it was like
Okay.
that thing. But
Yeah.
I'm more in like the math part of things. I like
Mm-hmm.
math a lot.
Yeah.
The
Which
complexity of it. It's
mm,
just so beautiful.
yeah, those are like the first you use two words to describe math: complexity and beautiful. Like the first one I hear a lot, the second one not so much. So I want to explore that. So tell us a little bit about your relationship with math. Like how did did you always enjoy mathematics? Was it something that grew on you? Tell us a little bit about that. Because we all know, and you more than anyone, that usually some students are very resistant to math and everything that relates with it. So tell us a little bit about how was it in your case?
It's so interesting that it's like I didn't like math when I started learning math. Like it hasn't been my thing for the longest time. Like when I was in primary, so we call it primary in my part of the world. So you guys call it
Mhm.
elementary school. I didn't like it at all, mainly because I think most of it was fear. So when
Mm.
I got to elementary, I could read, I could count, but now I was introduced to this thing and it was kind of complex. Now I had to divide what is that? And you know, when you're told that, okay, so this is dividing, you need to take this number and divide with this, and you need to get some answer. So
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of complex. And now that when I look back, now that I'm a teacher, when I look back, I think it would have been easier for me if someone told me that, okay, so when you divide, think of it like this, think of it as sharing. And I had to like come up with the concept on my own in my head. I think that would have been easy because I think I was given the algorithm and it didn't make sense to me. And I didn't know how to like do this thing besides recalling what the teacher had said to me and really trying to replicate what he was doing.
Mm.
So, yeah, now
Yeah.
that I think of it, I think if someone had told me, like, had taught me a different way of actually have to like think of it as sharing and think
Mm-hmm.
of it as groups and all that, I think it would have been easier. So
Yeah.
most of it was like trying to comprehend the hard algorithms I've been given. And oh my God, it was so hard. But you know, thinking of it was so beautiful when I got to high school, being
Mm.
introduced to algebra. Now, when you're like being introduced to algebra, there's the unknown. So your algebra is basically trying to figure out the unknown, which is X in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was quite the enlightening experience for me because now I had to think of like, how do you solve this? How do you get X? And it was so interesting having to like figure that concept on my own. It was just a beautiful experience. And I think if maybe we would do that for most kids, like letting them explore and figure things out for themselves, I think they'll think math is a beautiful concept. Um, you know, Joel, if you didn't know something and you figured it out on your own, you know how beautiful that experience is.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's so interesting because I was listening to you. I was thinking about it's almost like we can look at math and algebra as like an adventure into the unknown, right? It's like okay, so
Totally.
and just that framework, that way of putting it, automatically, even me makes me automatically going, yeah, I want to go back and do like equations and do algebra because I with that just with that framework makes a lot of sense. And so basically to you, high school was like this pivotal moment where you started to enjoy math more. Is that it?
Totally. That's very correct.
Yeah. And so, and how was like how do you go from there to oh, okay, so now I enjoy math to you know what, I'm going to graduate on science and major in math because that's like a big step. Like one thing is I enjoy this subject, the other thing is this is going to be like my main focus. Like how is that experience?
Um, that's quite beautiful. Um, it's a beautiful question, but I'm also trying to figure out how I got there. But when I try to think of it as like, when I just fell in love with math, it was just like everything was so easy for me. I could do anything
Mm,
with math. Now that I
mm,
understand that, okay, so this is a beautiful concept that like builds itself up, like you know this, and then you can build on the next, and it's just a beautiful thing altogether. So I think it was just that for me. I was like, okay, I want to dive deep into this thing and understand all of it. I want to understand it holistically, see how it works. Okay, how did we get here? What's the algebra? How do you do like more
mm,
complex things? So I think it was basically that for me.
mm. Yeah, so there's this part of interest, but also this part of proficiency where you're actually starting to understand, like you're good at it. You start to see behind the veil, you start to understand the complexity of it, and you fell in love with it. Great. So okay, so you mentioned like some of the concepts that you believe that are easier to make students interested in math. So thinking about the unknown when you teach algebra, instead of dividing, thinking about sharing, thinking about groups. Is there besides those ones? Is there anything else that you usually teach our students, or any metaphor or approach that you have with our students? that makes them enjoy math more, or these are the main ones?
I think one of the things that makes students like enjoy math more is like showing them that math is like something that you do every day. So
Mm,
when you're trying to introduce a concept, use like everyday activities, everyday materials, something that they can relate to. I think that like makes them like think out of the box. Okay, now try to envision like the whole concept like outside of just math, and then
mm,
they start to understand it. And then now when you introduce the algorithm, they understand what this thing is. I think it
mm.
really helps.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like a lot of students, when in my course, when we talk about finance and the math aspect of entrepreneurship, it's great to see them understand that, or I see them understand that, oh, okay, so math is applied into this real thing. Because a lot of students enjoy the abstract complexity of math, right? But other students need to understand like the practical aspect of it. That makes a lot of sense. So let me run some scenarios on you. So let's say that I'm a student, and you probably had this, like you probably had students at the SE that they meet with you, and the first thing that they say is, "I hate math. I'm not good at it. I don't want to do it. I just don't like it. It's awful." Like, how do you go about trying to teach these students how to enjoy math more?
Um, okay, that's very interesting because I'm saying this is interesting because I encounter these questions with even students that I don't teach or interact with because I usually do math onboarding. Like every new student has to go through me before they can like do any other thing. So most of them will be like, I won't need math in my life. I'm like, okay, so you will need to count your taxes. How are you going to do that? So it's not about like doing the complex things in high school, middle school. You just learn the basic math that you need every day. And that's very important. If you're going to be working and probably you will be asked to uh, make an invoice and they'll tell you that, okay, so this is the hours you worked. How are you going to multiply that with your rate if you don't know how to do anything? So you need math every day. And the math that you learn in high school, middle school is interesting. It's something that you'll see in your daily life.
Mm-hmm.
So think of this as like um, some sort of provision for your future life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that putting it that way, it facilitates a lot. So, you mentioned you were a guide with novice with young students, and you enjoy that. Can you tell us a little bit about the differences between? Of course, there's differences in the material, but from a tutoring standpoint or from a teaching standpoint, is there any difference between teaching math to someone that's a novice and teaching math to someone that's a teenager?
Um, I think that there's a huge difference. There's like a huge gap because imagine a little kid. Imagine yourself when you're little. You're so inquisitive. You were so curious about a lot of things, and teaching a curious mind is like the best thing because they will ask you things. They will ask you something until they understand. They will not let you get away with it. So I think that's the huge difference. So a teenager will be like, okay, so this is it. And they try to do it, fail, and be like, okay, I don't think I quite understand it. Let's go over it
Mm,
again. Um, but a little kid would stop you there and then, like, okay, let's stop. I don't understand this. Let's go back one step. And it's just so beautiful. And yeah, I think with little kids, it's like very beautiful because they're like inquisitive like that. They'll stop you at any point and be like, okay, now let's stop. Recap, Nisha. I didn't understand you. So
yeah.
there's the difference. One is curious, one almost wants to get over and done with it, but not
Yeah.
most of them.
Yeah. So let me ask you one more question before we go into the more personal side, because that's something I want to do in this interview as well. So let's say that I'm a new student at the SC, and like this is literally my first day, or I'm in the onboarding process. Like, how do we teach math in our school? Like, what are the different processes? What are the different softwares? How does that work?
Okay. I think one thing that I usually lead with is that our math is self-paced, and we use very adaptive and like easy to understand apps like Math Space and Khan. If you've seen one of those, I think you understand that, okay, these are apps that try to simplify math, like they simplify these concepts. They write it in like a very easy language that anyone and everybody can understand. So that's one of the things I usually lead with, because if you
Mm-hmm.
tell someone that something is easy, and then they listen up a bit. So yeah,
Yeah.
but I like how our math program is self-paced. You don't have to do like specific work that you assigned today. Okay, so today you need to get over unit one, and tomorrow I'm moving on to the next. You can like work as fast as you want if that's what you feel,
Mm-hmm.
if that's how you're feeling. So yeah, we give you the app, we guide you through it, we show you how to use it. And for high schoolers, we often have classes for it. But
Mm-hmm.
most of it is like self-paced. You can
Mm-hmm.
work as fast as you can. You can do 2 years of math in one. And if you're a kid who really loves math, I think
Yeah.
that's heaven for you.
Yeah, and if not, we can also support you with some tutoring and people like yourself and others that will help students to overthrow
Move
the
forward.
challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's beautiful. And really speaking, truly speaking, I never had that in my school or anywhere where I was like given a one-on-one tutor to walk me through stuff. You had to
Mm-hmm.
like figure it out on your own or ask your parents. And if they
Yeah,
didn't know, that's it for you. You
yeah,
won't be able to turn
exactly.
in your work. So yeah, I think it's one aspect of TSC that I really appreciate, that they like prioritize the needs of a student, and
Yeah.
that's really beautiful to see.
Yeah, and it's great that that's like a tutor and not first of all, not a teacher and or a guide and a parent. Because my own theory is that if you have like a math teacher where you're seeing them every single day and teaching in like the traditional sense of teaching, not the way we do it at the SC, like usually we develop like these as students develop this very weird relationship with the math teacher because it's hard and they feel like they're not being able to do things and all of that. And also, sometimes parents can help you. And even like, so my mom taught math classes. And so I never had a problem with delivering my homework, but because it was my mom explaining, it was very hard to understand because as a teenager you're like, oh, you're my mother and you're like you're this, you're that. I don't want to learn from you. There's this conflict, and having someone like you and other people on our team that can help us like navigate that, it's way better. So let me ask you something. You always smile when you mention your moment in novice and working with younger students. Let me ask you, how were you as a child?
I sometimes think of myself as like a child who was like so square. I was like so scared of making mistakes as a child. And sometimes I regret that, because I think I missed out on a lot of things because I
Mm,
was scared of making mistakes, even the tiny ones, and I was scared of failing. So yeah, I think if I could go back, I'll change that about me as a child and like make more mistakes, live a little bit more. But part of that stemmed from the, okay, so in my culture, if you've done something wrong, you're usually like whooped at home. Someone would like call you, and then you're thoroughly whooped for that. So I think
yeah,
most of the fear stemmed from that. But besides that, I was a jolly person, but
yeah.
a very square kid,
Mm-hmm.
one that you would tell to do something and they will do it thoroughly because they're scared of getting it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, because we mentioned to fail this in the beginning of the interview, but you were born, I think, in Eswatini, right?
Yes, yes, that's
Okay,
right.
so let's assume that there's a couple of people who just heard that word and they had no idea what Eswatini is. Like Eswatini is a country, right? But tell us a little bit more about your culture in there.
Um, so Eswatini is like a small country, southern part of Africa. It's more cultural, if I may say so myself. We're actually the last absolute monarchy, I think. So we're more cultural. Even when there's a cultural event in the country, everything stops.
Mm,
And the people here like more grounded, something like that. We're just like it's a small country, so it's more like a small community that is culture rich,
mm.
and yeah, it's a beautiful country.
Do you think that your culture and your upbringing there influence the way you teach students from other countries?
Um, no, it
Okay,
doesn't.
so it doesn't at all. It's
Let me tell
because
you why I say that.
yeah.
In my culture, you're not supposed, first of all, if someone is older than you, you're not supposed to refer to them by their first name. And whatever they tell you need to take it, and you're not supposed to question it because they're older than you. If you
Mm,
question them, it's like disrespect, utter
mm,
disrespect. So whatever they tell you is correct. And I even think that in a class, I would have been scared to say, teacher, I don't think that's correct because I'm scared of like saying that to an adult. So
oh
that's
wow.
how things are in my part of the world.
Yeah.
So
So
I
maybe
don't
maybe yeah, go ahead, sorry.
sorry about that. So I don't think I like apply that to the students that I interact with.
Mhm,
I think TSC taught me a lot about allowing students to have a voice in the class, to hear what
mm.
they have to say, and to just lead the class. So I
Yeah.
admire that about TSE.
Yeah, I was just thinking that maybe it did influence you by making sure that you want to do the opposite of your experience, right? In that sense. Uh
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. So one of the things that I also like to do in these interviews is sometimes students they look at us and they see guides and it's easy to look at the teacher or at the guide and forget that he's also a human being, that is a person that has a story, that was a child, was a teenager. So you told us a little bit about how was your childhood. Was your teenage when you were a teenager, were you still like that squared person, always scared of making mistakes, or did you have like a rebellious face that when you try to do something or become something different?
I did have like a bit to the point that I think my last year of high school, I didn't even do so well in my academics because I had that phase where I changed a bit. I don't know, maybe I thought I was an adult then. I
Mm,
changed a bit and I started doing things that I wouldn't do personally.
mm,
So yeah, now looking back, I'm thinking I wouldn't have done that. Not me. That's so not me. But
yeah,
yeah, I did have that phase, and yeah, I changed. And I now thinking about it, I think it was very normal because
yeah.
that happens to every teenager.
Exactly. I have this theory that one of the reasons why we're good at TSC at teaching teenagers, and obvious of course, but teenagers, is that a lot of guys have a bunch of self-awareness about their teenage periods and they remember what it's like to be a teenager. So, and I think that a lot of teachers in public education in different schools, it's almost like you're so used to being the teacher that you forget about what was it like for you to be the teenager, right? And so, and to be rebellious and sometimes to be like, I don't know, try to provoke something or try to be extremely different and all of that. And we have that self-awareness, and that helps us understand that it's normal, have more patience, and help students in a different way. So that's great. We talked about your childhood, talk about your teenage years as well. One of the things that like kids ask me a lot, and because there's a lot of questions that I bring to these interviews that are basically questions that kids ask me. And so is it okay if we do like a quick round of quick questions, like about movies, books, music, all of that?
Okay.
Okay, so one of the question is, what's your favorite movie and why?
Let me think. Let me think. I think that's a hard one because I have a lot of good movies, and don't. I think you'll find me very. I love animated movies. So,
Okay.
growing up, I kind of liked like Barbie movies because
Okay.
they kind of had a they had a good ending.
Mm,
So, I think my favorite one growing up was like Princess Charm School. So it's about this girl who didn't know anything when I got to the school, but then ended up being like the princess type of the school. So it was
mm-hmm,
like so beautiful. And I remember it had this one song that she was singing that she didn't have the balance because remember schools like in Barbie movies about posture, how you carry yourself
mm,
and that and all that. So I don't have the balance. I think I'm gonna fall. Uh,
yeah.
trying hard, something, something. So I used to sing that song, but I can't recall it now.
Oh
And
wow.
used to like every time I would encounter like something difficult, I'd sing that song, and I think that, and I'll think that okay, now I'm getting it. I'm getting there. Okay,
Oh
no.
wow. That's so, I don't, it's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. We need to find that song and somehow clip
Funny
it
now that I
in.
think about it, I can share
Yeah.
with I can share with you. But yeah, I think it was just my goofy phase, but a
Yeah.
beautiful one nonetheless.
we
But
we we need to find that song and somehow put it in the description or something like that so students can listen to it. That was like your favorite movie, when from my understanding, when you were growing up. Like recently, is there any other movies that you've enjoyed that or that you would recommend?
any other movie that I would recommend? Huh. I'm not a movie person, but I'm more of a series person.
Okay, so let's go
And
into there. We can also talk about
I
series like
think my favorite series was Suits. Have you ever watched Suits?
I
I would
have, yes.
rewatch that over and over and over.
Really? Okay, what is it
Uh,
about it that you enjoyed?
I like how Mike Ross like fits into a character that he didn't even go to school for and actually
Mm-hmm.
does it better than people who like even went to school for and had like tons of experience in it. And that to me is interesting and just shows me that okay, there's really nothing you cannot do if you really want to
Mm-hmm.
do it. You don't need to have qualifications or anything. Yes, you need qualifications, but if you're telling yourself that I want to do this and you like channel your mind to that thing, you can do it.
Yeah. It's
So
so
I think
interesting that, oh, sorry.
Suits is like my favorite series of all time. I would even
Yeah.
watch it again given a chance.
Yeah, it's so interesting because both the movie and the TV show somehow relate with education, and like thriving in education. Like, so the first movie that you mentioned was this girl that gets to the school, she doesn't know anything, and she ends up being like the princess in the school. And then Suits with Mike being someone that plays a role, even though he has not that kind of education, he still plays that role and performs better than people who have that education. It's so interesting. Okay, so we have movie, we have TV show. Let's go into the other two. First, music. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, you already told us that you have a song that you sing when you're facing obstacles, but other than that, what are some songs or bands that you think that somehow are important to you, and why?
Mm, I think I'm a sucker for good vocalists.
Mm, okay,
And I think I've had phases where I like this artist and I let go of them. But my
okay.
recent one is Teddy Swims.
I don't know of him. What do you enjoy about him?
He's a good vocalist, and I think that he sings from the heart.
Mm.
So I kind of like that about him. You should listen. And that's the funny thing about Teddy. Teddy doesn't look like his voice.
Oh,
Teddy
okay.
sings so beautiful, and then when you see him as a person, he's this guy with a beard and tattoos all over his face, which is very
Mm.
interesting for me because the voice doesn't match the person. So,
Got it. Is there any particular song that you think that we should listen to, like that you would recommend to people?
uh, let me think. What's a nice Teddy song? Okay. The both of the like Teddy songs are like more about love, the more love songs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my favorite is like, if you're gonna leave me be in the middle of the night, set the bed on fire, set the bed on fire, and let it burn. Yeah, something like that.
Whoa! Look, I was just asking for a recommendation. I wasn't asking for a private concert. We might need to pay you for this. My God, this is so well.
Please
Very
do. I
good.
charge. I don't charge much, so I need to like pass $20 per hour per minute.
That was very good. Okay, so that is your musical recommendation. Okay, so let's get into the last one. So, one of the things that we do, regardless of subject at the SE, is to read a lot. Like we place a lot of value in understanding knowledge, into actually gathering knowledge, into doing deep readings, understanding. So books are like these companions for both guides, students, and everyone in between. So first of all, is there like, do you have a favorite book, something that a book that you really, really enjoy?
Mm, a book that I really, really enjoy. Um, Let me think. I'm more of a fiction reader, to tell
Mm-hmm.
you the truth. Let me admit that I've always been. Since I was a kid,
Okay.
I've like always read about fiction. Um, and I think my favorite book right now is not fiction, is Atomic Habits. It's a book that I always go to every
Mm-hmm.
time because I often had a problem like sticking to habits or certain things. And I think James Clear like takes me back to that all the time I read the book. And I even have, you'd be surprised. On my fridge back in my apartment, I have like a list of things that I do every day. So I learned this thing called habit stacking from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this list of things that I do every day, no doubt. And
Mm-hmm.
I try to feed in new habits there so that I make sure that I do them because there's no way I would dodge them because they're like stacked in between things that I do on a daily without fail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think my
So,
favorite book is that.
okay.
And a fiction book that I like that I would also recommend you read is um what's the book again? I'm currently reading it. I'm rereading it again because of how beautiful it is. Half of a Yellow Sun. It's written by an African. It's mostly about a country that is up north, not really up north. It's like in the middle of Africa, like how it was back in the day before they were fully independent, like the revolution, the politics there. It's a beautifully written book.
Mm. Yeah.
It's
So,
it's a
so,
bit
so,
of fiction and documentary type of situation.
yeah, like historical fiction. Can you repeat the name because I didn't get it?
Half of a Yellow Sun.
Half of a Hilo San. Okay, so we'll also have a link for the book so the people watching can listen to. Okay, so Sesa, we're almost done with our interview. Thank you for all of those for that personal side as well. I have one last question. I want to ask this question to all of our guys, which is, let's say that you have a student or a parent asking you, why should I go into TSC? How would you answer?
Um, okay. let me tell you something. As someone who aspires to be a parent, I would love my kid to come to the school. And I hope it still exists by the time that I have my children, mainly because I like the culture of having kids be the driver in their own education journey, like take a lead in what they're doing, owning their crafts, owning the classroom, being the voice in the class. And I think that on its own makes like students like be in an environment where they think they're thriving, not doing much, but they think they're thriving because they're owning this. This is their journey. They're taking part in it. And yeah, I think I would say that to a parent. And me being a future parent, I hope I
Yeah.
would bring my kid to TSC for that.
Yeah, I think that there's no better endorsement than that. Like saying that if you had a child, you would like it to go into this school. It's probably one of the best endorsements that we could ever had, that we ever have here at DSC. Well, Seta, this was amazing. Thank you so much. To everyone that's watching, leave some love in comments for Sesa if you had some kind of interaction with her. And you can subscribe to the TSC channel, and I'll see you on the next episode. Sesa, thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you, Joelle. Have a good day.